Yo, it's Klaire Fluffle, and I'm here to say, subscribe to this channel. It's free and you won't pay. Maybe give the video a like and comment, because it helps my video out. I don't know, honestly, I'm kind of over this bit already. I'm just gonna, oopity doopity. But seriously, you actually should leave a comment, because you get to vote for what the next Copy Ability Spotlight will be. Just leave a comment before the deadline of March 15th, 2025, and your vote will be counted. As an added bonus, if this video can get to 200 likes before that deadline as well, you'll get the next Spotlight a full week early. Dash pretty crazy. So get to liking, get to commenting, get to watching the rest of the video, I suppose. All of that being said, it's Yo-Yo! Yay! From the original days of 1996 all the way to the last year, where it tied with Mirror in a Reddit popularity poll of all things, Yo-Yo stands as a fan favorite. Given this, would you believe me if I said this thing only shows up in 4 games? And honestly, I was surprised. I kind of thought it was even less. There are some abilities that are really popular, but don't see that reflected in the games. Oh well, I mean, just because an ability doesn't show up in a lot of games doesn't mean it's bad. Look at Jet, for example. That said, we're looking at efficiency here. Check out this video here I made where I explain why it's the only good metric for this kind of thing. An ability's popularity doesn't really mean squat when looking at how good it is either. Look at Jet, for example. So without further ado, is Yo-Yo as cool as its hat implies, or as cringe as my funky fresh beats at the start of this video? Let's find out! What immediately stands out about Yo-Yo, from a gameplay point at least, is how huge its attacks are. Up and down and all around, Yo-Yo's Yo-Yo goes places. Yo. Those of you who actually watched my video about efficiency in Kirby, thank you! Know that something more defensive like this is usually something that I'd speak negatively about, since you really don't need defense in a game like Kirby if your offense can clear things well enough. And while this is true, I stand by what I said because it's correct. Don't be mad, please. That doesn't mean that all forms of defense, though, are bad. The most reliable method of keeping up a good offense in a game like Kirby is by having some defensive merit. Just look at Jet. Alright, listen, it's not the Jet Spotlight, okay? I need to stop bringing it up. To keep it on Yo-Yo, at a glance, it has several great tools that it can use to succeed. All of Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo Up, and Yo-Yo Down cover an area around Kirby that they need to go to, and its large range helps it do things like break blocks. Hammer Drop, not a move in Hammer's kit, this fact makes me feel like I committed a crime or something, is a strong command grab, which is perfect given that it's in the Superstar games where command grabs are just broken. Geyser Spiral is a multi-hit attack that also functions as an anti-air and can work against bosses. And while, spoilers, its dash attack, Break Spin, it's really bad actually. Hey, it has a jump spin, which is the exact same thing, but you jump instead of, I don't know, not jump. And aerial dash attacks matter way more in Kirby than grounded ones to begin with. I really want to emphasize just how big of a deal it is that Yo-Yo has all of these tools. There are abilities out there that are starving for options. It could maybe be a lot better if they could only get just 1 or 2 moves that solve their shortcomings. And meanwhile, Yo-Yo is an embarrassment of riches. It has attacks that hurt bosses, it's got fast offensive options to deal with enemies and bosses that can also help cheese shortcuts in levels. It's even got an aerial dash attack that can deal with enemies as you're moving through said levels. This is everything an efficient ability could want. I know I said embarrassment of riches before because I like my funky metaphors. I'm looking out for everybody, but I mean, you could just call this really good too. Like, that's fine. Given all of these facts, why am I going to spend the rest of this video saying that Yo-Yo is not very good? After my old Mirror Spotlight, you just think I'd learn my lesson and lie or something? Say that, hey, ability popular, that means it's good. But here we are. So you may have noticed a couple of things that I didn't mention when highlighting Yo-Yo's highlights. Notably, while I tried to say as many nice things as I could think of, there were certain adjectives that I didn't use. Adjectives such as, strong, efficient, good. Yo-Yo is one of those tragic cases where it has everything that it could ever want, and it winds up doing very little with what it's got. It's like a reverse Needle. That ability has very few moves, but tries its best to be good. Granted, neither of the two are that great. They have that in common, I guess. Probably give the perk to Needle here, but either way, why does Yo-Yo struggle with all of the moves that it has? Well, let's take a look, starting with its main Yo-Yo moves. Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo up, Yo-Yo down. Such creativity. These moves have a ton of range and really not much else, but even the range winds up having problems. Up and down, yeah, it's pretty good, but you don't have nearly enough of a hitbox to actually do things like break blocks for shortcuts. The regular Yo-Yo, it has a lot more range, but all it really does is hit directly forward, maybe like a tiny bit above and below, so oftentimes it misses critical blocks, notably the one in Revenge of Meta Knight Chapter 6 of Kirby Superstar, and Ultra. I had to stop myself there. I said Revenge of Meta Knight, people. I wanted to say Romka. Hope you appreciate what I do for you. But what about the dash attack? It has one in the air, and those matter way more than the grounded ones, right? This is very true, but just because it has an aerial dash attack, it doesn't make it good. Granted, I wouldn't say this is bad. It's a bit unwieldy given the dash attack doesn't actually have invincibility, at least in the Superstar games, but what, Star Allies? I guess Fighters 2? It's there, so if you're using Yo-Yo in those games and you're kind of new to all of this efficient Kirby stuff, awesome, Yo-Yo sounds pretty nice. And you know what, for what it's worth, in the Superstar games, it's not as nice, but it can still be pretty good given that it just has all of these tools, But still, it being slightly faster than what normal Kirby can do for an aerial dash attack, no, not in a franchise with aerial dashes like what we're gonna get from abilities like Wing, Parasol, Fire, ESP, Jet, because for some reason that ability's like really on my mind today. Or heck, even some of the lesser but still impressive ones like Beetle, Suplex like we talked about, Drill. I'm even ignoring abilities whose movement perks don't come from a dash attack. I mean, Wheel, Tornado, UFO? They're looking at a game like Star Allies with huge levels. You look at Yo-Yo, then Wing, then Yo-Yo again, then Meta Knight, then Yo-Yo again, then Zan, then Yo-Yo again, then Magolor, then Yo-Yo again. Yikes. But fine, Yo-Yo may not be good in the traditional ways, never speak again, Claire, but it is a fact that using Yo-Yo for the levels isn't a downgrade compared to normal. And while it's a fair bit worse in the Superstar games, there's a less broken stuff for Yo-Yo to not do in Ultra compared to the original. The original Superstar, ultimately, that's a loss, whatever, but Ultra and Star Allies, they have a chance, right? What if Yo-Yo was, say, good against bosses? That would even put Fighters 2 in the equation because the story mode has a couple boss fights, right? Sadly, no. The Fighters 2 has the bosses, I guess that sounded a little weird, but Yo-Yo, good against the bosses. Remember everything I've been saying about Yo-Yo's speed and utility? I literally just said it, so I really hope you do. Well, the same thing applies to the damage. Yo-Yo kind of has strong attacks, but they all have drawbacks. For example, yes, Hammer Drop, the command grab if you need a refresher, I know I certainly would, is very strong, almost dealing as much damage as a Star Bullet from normal Kirby, which is very good. If you can deal close damage to what a bullet would deal, you got a good start. But it's a command grab, so where you can actually use it winds up being very limited. As for Gazer Spiral, it does deal okay damage, but that's all it does. It's okay. And not to mention that if an enemy isn't in the air or they're not super tall like Wispy, you're probably not going to get the max amount of damage out of it and miss some pretty critical quick kills. For all the flaws that abilities like Suplex have, that we went over last time, you can't deny that that thing did damage. When it hurt, it hurt. Yo-Yo, at best, is okay for bosses, simple as that. Let's take Superstar Ultra, for example. I'm bringing this up because Yo-Yo is the 13th ranked of the not pastimes for Help Pretty Hero, and that's exactly one spot worse than what Suplex was by a whole second. And that made me laugh. We just talked about Suplex. But if you look at what Yo-Yo can do, it does certainly look like it's doing a lot. Hitting from range, Geyser Spiral to deal some damage, get that hammer drop in there when you can. It's nice, but it's not. It's too weak. For what it's worth, I'm not sure Yo-Yo being able to easily deal a lot of damage would be great for balance, but not only does Yo-Yo have no advanced tech to speak of to make it deal good damage, this is KSSU. Hammer's right there, people. Come on. And what's really crazy is that two of the games, actually do kind of have advanced tech for Yo-Yo, and it does make Yo-Yo a lot better. I say kind of because its role for bosses and regular battles in Kirby Fighters 2 is fairly underwhelming, but it does kind of get the job done, especially compared to the Superstar games. There's something actually quite nice about Yo-Yo and its offense-leaning defensive merits is that the very hard run of single-handed mode, well, I wouldn't say that Yo-Yo makes it easy, but it does make it fairly consistent. On the lower difficulties, you just kind of do what's easiest, whatever tends to be Yo-Yo's up into the spiral or doing the dash attack over and over again. Of all things, I know, right? But on very hard, because the AI is so much better, you can apply pressure with the Yo-Yo and keep up the offense with your huge hitboxes. In particular, like I said before, Yo-Yo up into Geyser Spiral. I don't think I would necessarily call this advanced tech, but it's really more advanced than anything else that we've covered with Yo-Yo so far. Oh, and not to mention the times that Yo-Yo has are very lackluster. It peaks at 11 out of 22 on normal, which is okay, but it crashes on every other difficulty with a rancid second from the bottom time for both easy and hard. Yikes, but hey, it's consistent, I guess. With this in mind, it's a similar story for the the story mode. I'm funny, maybe. Granted, with enough attack boosts, you can get some seriously strong damage out of Yo-Yo's many moves, but you can do the same thing with plenty of other abilities, those of which benefit from the longer lengths of the later chapters. Yeah, this is one of those that you can't unlock until Chapter 3, and while I guess that it's nice that you have it so early, there are some abilities you don't even have for Chapter 5, by the way. There is little reason to use anything other than Hammer here. In Chapter 4, you can at least hope to get lucky and get charge speed boosts to have fun with, and not to mention you make Shadow Kirby a joke instead of my sleep paralysis demon this way. But even then, Yo-Yo doesn't have a charge move, so it cashes in its availability stamp to get no perks. If it makes you Yo-Yo fans, hi, that's me. I like Yo-Yo a lot, actually. Feel any better, Yo-Yo actually excels in competitive. It's not amazing, not to mention I don't count competitive for these videos since it's not really talking about efficient single-player play, but it actually has a lot of cool advanced stuff there, so check out competitive KF2 if you're interested. But if you want some real advanced tech, look no further than Kirby Star Allies. Yo-Yo doesn't have too much for movement, netting a middle-of-the-road 15th out of 27th time for no piggyback guest star allies. And just those dash attacks being invincible and super beginner-friendly, which is actually very nice. I'm not trying to be an elitist jerk here. It's a genuine perk of Yo-Yo that I really appreciate. But when you look into the ultimate choice, things get a lot spicier. Fitting, given we're talking about the ultimate choice here, but you're not going to believe what comes next, okay? Yeah, I mean, I guess the tech itself isn't too unbelievable, but the name of it may alarm you. It certainly alarmed me, reading about how Yo-Yo can actually deal pretty impressive damage to grounded bosses, only to find out that the term is called dog cancel. For spotlights, especially, I really try not to highlight, the whole puppy thing all that much, but do I really want to be going about my day, only for someone to point at me and go, hey, dog cancel, haha? Is the pursuit of knowledge really worth the memes people will throw my way? Yes. Yes, it is. Anyway, if you're wondering what dog canceling is, oh boy, this one's a doozy. Okay, so you start by holding down. Simple enough, I think we can all do that. Then you stop holding down and instead hold the attack button to initiate Yo-Yo's new move, Walk the Dog. However, once you get in your first hit, you tap the jump button while still holding the attack button. This will net you an extra hit on top of the landing hit from the yo-yo itself. Once you land, which shouldn't take too long given that you did a short hop, you can repeat this process again immediately. And I won't lie, this has some serious flaws that we'll get into, but at the same time, yeah, this is legit. The real problem here is that Walk the Dog only really works on grounded enemies. Now this is good for, say, Wispy, some of the mini-bosses, Meta Knight, Dedede, Morpho Knight, stuff like that. But what is this grounded attack with a grounded hitbox, with a grounded third thing going to do against bosses that don't leave the air, like the Mages, Krako, Highness, Void? Sure, you have your old reliables, Gazer Spiral, Yo-Yo Up, Hammer Drop, now Jump Spin, which has this bizarre property of dealing 6 hits, with the strongest hit not being the first or last, but rather the 5th, I'm actually serious here. But none of these moves even come close to comparing to the power of Dog Cancel. As a pup who does her best, I hope I never have to feel the wrath of dog canceling. Granted, there are a good chunk of bosses that Yo-Yo still does pretty well against, and not to mention that the downside of dog canceling only working on ground enemies kinda has a caveat. Truly, I am never safe. See, with Kirby, it effectively only works on the ground because hovering is, in every way, worse than jumping. Gim, or Jim, whatever, the helper buddy, jumps and it does not hover, meaning that, in theory, you can actually pull this off in the air. I didn't even try this for footage. I'm not such a ruthless pup that I cancel other dogs, but I can vouch that Gim has a fair amount better of time than Yo-Yo Kirby. For the sake of this video, I'm not gonna dock any points because that would be insano behavior. That being said though, wow, after the last 2 spotlights, this feels weird to say already, but we've said all that needs to be said on Yo-Yo. That's, again, feels weird. I keep thinking this needs to be a much longer video. Ironically, though, I'm not about to draw it out, so let's get to the Kirby Copy Abilities Spotlight Rankings. How does Yo-Yo compare to itself in the 4 games that it's in? If you've seen the previous spotlights, it probably won't surprise you that at number 4 is Yo-Yo in Kirby Superstar. It's really hard to stand out when the good stuff is so broken. A Gazer Spiral doesn't even work as an attack to hit bosses in their weak butts. So what's the point even? Oh, well, like, at least this grab the enemy through a wall thing. That looked kind of funny to me. I don't know. Number 3, Kirby Superstar Ultra. Yeah, it's not great in either of these, and it didn't really get a lot of the buffs that it needed, but Ultra it's just a much nicer game than the original. The dash attacking into a Gordo by a complete mistake doesn't cost 1/3 of your health, for example. Number 2, Kirby Fighters 2. I couldn't decide for a while whether this should go higher than Ultra or lower, but it's a case of higher highs and lower lows here. Given Yo-Yo doesn't really do much in either game, I can at least agree that being top half for once in terms of the difficulty for one mode is legit enough. And finally, number 1, Kirby Star Allies. Usually I don't encourage dog canceling, but now that I know it's just Kirby tech lingo, I highly endorse it. Just don't mix up the meaning behind my words, please, okay? Alright, we're almost done. Time for the Kirby Copy Ability Spotlight Ratings! They're not rankings, they just sound really similar. This may come as a surprise, but for the beginner looking to get their feet wet with Kirby speedrunning and general efficient play, they're just learning stuff. Yo-Yo gets a B. Look, I know, I spent so much time talking about Yo-Yo's downsides and walk the dog tricks are super difficult, but the simple fact is that even if it doesn't do great with its tools, Yo-Yo does have all the tools an efficient ability should have. Not to mention, even if they're weak, they're easy to understand, so I think a beginner would get a lot of value out of them. Sure, you'd eventually outgrow it, but we never really let go of the past, right? For someone like me who has a lot more experience under their belts but can't quite nail the top level stuff consistently, Yo-Yo does a bit worse with a C. It's got its moments like Fighters 2 and Star Allies, and even 13th out of 20 isn't really that bad for Superstar Ultra's Helper to Hero, but there are much better, more efficient abilities that you have the skill to use. Now, up next, on a casual level, I give Yo-Yo a fun out of 10. Lastly, for the advanced player who's gunning for world records and really has mastered their Kirby, I'm not gonna give Yo-Yo an F here, don't worry. It's definitely better than Backdrop by a lot, but not a lot enough to get it anything higher than a D. Trust me, the advanced category doesn't exclusively exist for Ds and Fs, but there is also a reason I set up these categories the way that I do, you know? Simply reading the phrase, Yo-Yo gets a B, makes me really happy, to the point where I can trash on Yo-Yo with a D and move on. But move on I can't, because we must ask the question of how good Yo-Yo was overall. So, how good was Yo-Yo overall? Well, as I'm sure you could tell, not very, which is a huge bummer because I really like Yo-Yo. A good amount of the people who watch my videos tend to have the impression that because I'm a speedrunner and I make these kinds of videos, that I only really like what's super optimal, and no, that's just never been the case. I like to think I never act like that either. I'm a big fan of Yo-Yo for many reasons, but when looking at it throughout these games, sadly, no, it's not very good. It has its moments, and it's certainly not as bad as Backdrop from last time, but it fails to truly impress in any of these games that it's in. But, yeah, at least that is cool, right? And that'll do it for another Spotlight. Remember to leave your votes for the next Spotlight in the comments before the deadline of March 15th, 2025. There's been some decent momentum for abilities like Parasol and Sword recently, and I also noticed a lot of the requests to cover single-use abilities such as Crash. Of course, I also mentioned Jet like 40 times today, so maybe there's interest for that one too. Who knows? Not me. At least not yet. That's what's so exciting about this. Either way, thank you so much for the support, and if you'd like to go the extra mile, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon or join as a YouTube mempup. You get nifty perks, including exclusive content that could be any variety of thing, really. Games, cartoons, anime, behind-the-scenes stuff, you name it, maybe I'll do it. Special thanks to my head-patting, Fluffle fan, Puptrons and Mempups, Freakish Uproar, Lydia Scribe, Nightfall, and Galaxy Fan 4. I love you all! And until I see you in another Spotlight, video, stream, whatever, I've been Klaire. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you around. Bye-bye!